Hey guys, it's Pineapple, and in this video we'll be talking about Eri, the girl that Deku and Mirio failed to save when they first came across her in My Hero Academia Season 4. Night Eye already had Overhaul on his radar, but after Deku and Mirio's meeting with Eri, a whole new layer to this investigation has become clear to the agency, and now it's time to gather the heroes, discuss what we know, and work out a plan to save this girl. The thumbnail is my second piece of custom art done by @TheJohnnyAzad on Twitter, and it features multiple heroes and people that we'll see during this operation to save Eri, and if you like it, make sure to give him some love. If you want to see teases for the next art release or just my next video, make sure to follow me on Twitter @VocalPineapple. If you want to get notifications whenever I upload, then you can subscribe, hit that bell icon, and then click the drop-down menu's notify option to make that happen and join the Pineapple Agency. Let's get to talking about Eri and all the things going on with this investigation after that intro. Hit it! So what is going on in this episode, and what is Operation Save Eri? In this video, we're going to be detailing everything there is to know about Eri, her quirk, and why she's valuable to the Shie Hassaikai, and also why the heroes have to save her, beyond just the fact that she's a girl in need of saving. To set all of this up, we've been getting teases amongst the recent episodes that Night Eye is suggesting a team-up between agencies. Ryukyu informs us that Night Eye wants to partner with her agency during Ochako and Tsuyu's internship, and in this episode we also learn that Fatgum's agency is also brought along, meaning Sun Eater and Kirishima are also part of this operation. Fatgum has a history in working with Tsukauchi and the police to investigate Trigger and other drug-related operations, and if you read Vigilantes, you understand why it makes perfect sense for him to be here, since this sort of operation takes him back to his roots. Aizawa's involvement also isn't much of a surprise, because he's another character who was somewhat involved with the Trigger investigation back during the time of the Vigilantes manga. So we've got Aizawa, Fatgum, Ryukyu, Night Eye, and even Gran Torino here representing their own agencies, along with a number of other heroes like Peter, Lockrock, and Bubble Girl. Of course, our students Deku, Kirishima, Ochako, Tsuyu, Mirio, Nejire, and Tamaki are all there as well, so whatever is being planned here has to be a big operation, especially since the police and SWAT are involved. Our students all make it to the offices together, not at first knowing that they were headed to the same place, and once they entered, they found themselves surrounded by pro-heroes from different agencies. Once everyone got seated, the time to talk about this Overhaul investigation was finally here. Night Eye explains what his agency knows so far. It all started with a scene that we actually saw during Season 3, during Twice's day off as he wanders the town. A villain group called the Reservoir Dogs starts committing crimes in the town, only to get absolutely destroyed by a rival villain group. There were reports of ridiculous things happening, like the villains being fused to car parts, but once the police arrived, all of their injuries and anything that was off about them disappeared. They were more than just back to normal. Their bodies actually healed any sort of small issues they had, like cavities or scars, but this stood out as really strange to police and specifically to Night Eye's agency, so he began to monitor the villains associated. Soon after they started to monitor Overhaul and his Yakuza group, they noticed how this band of Yakuza had been meeting with other underground associations in order to somehow raise funds for some sort of project. This led Overhaul to meeting Twice of the League of Villains, and this also makes Gran Torino remark that they've gotten the students, including Deku, mixed up in some pretty dark stuff. This causes Lockrock to say that they should get the kids out of the room so they can really get into the details, because he feels like everyone's kinda talking around the kids. Fatgum stands up for Kirishima and Tamaki at least, and says the two of them are actually star witnesses for part of this investigation. Night Eye says that the Shie Hassaikai are selling drugs and other materials to make money, but thanks to Red Riot's debut and them being able to recover the bullet, they've discovered something new. Something that no villain should have. A drug that erases quirks. Now, Aizawa and the others explain how it's different from his quirk, which just suppresses someone's quirk. This bullet actually partially destroys someone's quirk in a way that actually needs to be healed over time, if even. They tried to discover specifically what the drug is that's somehow producing the effect, and what they found inside is what starts to make this story take a significantly darker turn. Apparently, inside of the bullets, they found a human's blood and cells, meaning the effect of the bullet comes from someone's quirk or an effect found in their body. During this conversation, Deku and Mirio's faces start to sweat. Their breathing starts to get tense. They slowly start to panic and show fear, And that's when they hear the explanation of what Overhaul's quirk does. Overhaul's quirk allows him to disassemble and reassemble anything that he touches with his hands. He's obviously very proficient with it since he can do all sorts of things with his quirk, but that explains what he did to the reservoir dogs. He disassembled them in a car or a few other things and reassembled them all together so that they'd be fused to the car parts, and this effect wore off once Overhaul was a certain distance away, or maybe he fixed them before he walked away to lessen his crimes. Either way, once his quirk is explained, both Deku and Mirio immediately understand what's going on because they remember a certain fact. They remember the fact that Eri was covered in bandages. Night Eye also finally comments what everyone else is thinking and what Deku and Mirio just realized. He says that Chisaki has a daughter who they didn't know about, but now do thanks to Deku and Mirio's encounter with them. They noticed how her legs and arms are absolutely wrapped in bandages, and that means that sadly, the quirk erasing bullets are probably being made out of Eri's own flesh and blood. This means that Eri is getting repeatedly dismantled by Overhaul, and then they use what they need to create the bullets just for her to have to sit and be reassembled by Overhaul. We know that Overhaul can heal someone to even better than they were before he uses his quirk on them, so seeing how bandaged she is lets us know that whatever they're doing to the flesh on her arms and legs is something that even Overhaul can't fully heal properly, whether it's just because it's that bad or it's because he needs to keep her injured to a certain degree for certain samples to be taken. It's absolutely awful, especially when you consider the fact that Deku and Mirio had her right in front of them. If they had done something to save her, maybe she could have been saved the days and days that have gone by while Deku and Mirio attend classes and eat and have decent days, and she's in a dark room being reduced to flesh and bone by Overhaul and his evil assistants. It's enough to send both Deku and Mirio into a despair, but with that despair also comes a passion to do this correctly. After all, Night Eye did tell them that they needed to wait sometimes, even though it's frustrating, and that even if they had tried to save her at the time, there's no guarantee that they could have defeated Overhaul and they might have put Eri in even more danger. This leads to a big argument amongst the heroes on how they should go about finding Overhaul's specific location. Fat Gum thinks that they need to go full force, full throttle, and hit them everywhere that they can, but Night Eye says that they have to gather as much information first and be cautious, because that's how you save the day. You try and raise the chance of victory to 100%. Aizawa also chimes in and says, well, if that's the case, then why doesn't Night Eye just use his quirk to see into one of their futures and just get the information they need on the base that they'll eventually raid? This is where we get the proper explanation for Night Eye's quirk. Night Eye can actually see a person's entire life in the future that he sees when he touches them, but he only has about an hour to look through their timeline and find moments that he wants to view. While he can just easily solve the problem here by seeing Aizawa's future and just telling them where the hideout is, Night Eye still has an issue with the fact that he could see a person's death, and he doesn't exactly know what to do about that anymore. He doesn't believe that what he sees can be changed, so what's he supposed to do if he can tell that a person is gonna die? That's a lot of pressure, and on top of knowing that All Might is heading down that path, Night Eye can't bear the idea of holding on to that information for someone else. He can't bear having to keep that secret or hold that knowledge, so he refuses no matter how hard the heroes push. They all decide to go along with Night Eye's plan and do their searches for the hideout, and in the meantime, Deku and the others that are on standby continue their training. But what are we going to be seeing as a result of this meeting, and what is Eri's quirk that allows these bullets to have the effect that they do? First, let's explain the team for the operation, because they're going to be raiding Overhaul's base. The outside team is going to consist of Ryukyu's agency, Night Eye, and a mass of police. Gran Torino and Tsukauchi aren't actually going to be able to make it to this one because they've got a much bigger problem to deal with out in the mountains, as Kurogiri and the League of Villains are making their hidden moves. Ryukyu, Tsuyu, Ochako, Nejire, and even Night Eye are in charge of making sure no one escapes the hand of the law and tries to make a getaway. They're also there to act as a rescue team in case the building collapses on the raid team. Next up, we've got Fat Gum's agency. Sun Eater, Fat Gum, and Kirishima are like a three-pronged spear, shield, and sword combo. Sun Eater has a decent amount of mid and close range techniques, while Fat Gum serves as a perfect shield, and Kirishima also doubles as a shield that can step forward and become an unbreakable wall. Expect to see some of those roles being flipped in cool ways, and expect for Tamaki to have his own standout moment in this arc. That's not to say that Fat Gum and Kiri don't have another incredible moment this season, so I guess you could say that every member of this team has to hold their own weight at some point. Sun Eater has a really dangerous fight against a group of thugs, while Kirishima and Fat Gum take on another Sword and Shield combo, a moment that I know every Kirishima or Fat Gum fan is waiting for. Apart from that, we have the Capture Team. This team features Lock Rock, Aizawa, Deku, Mirio, and others that are pretty much the team tasked of diving into the hideout to find Eri and get her out of there. Aizawa is chosen because he can shut off Chisaki's quirk and definitely save a life, and his presence there also acts like a living quirk erasing bullet for any villains that need a taste of their own medicine. Lock Rock is there, who has a quirk that allows him to completely stop an area of space from moving and probably lock down other things like doors and boxes, and he's very useful for locking down areas as they shift around thanks to Mimic's quirk. And they have Mirio there, who can go through absolutely any obstacle and reach the target first. On top of that, they have Deku, who can perform a multitude of purposes and do anything from kick down doors and walls to speed around and beat down enemies. Finally, the last thing in this equation is of course Eri. She is the key behind all of this. What exactly is it that her quirk does? Well, Eri is a confusing character in the community. On one side, she's a cute little kid with a tragic backstory, and she's also the goal that our heroes have come to protect. On the other end, some see her as an easy way for Horikoshi to solve all the problems in the plot, like people being injured or dead or etc. This is because her quirk is one that at first seemed like some sort of plot device that a character introduces to take tension away from the story. Eri's quirk, Rewind, lets her basically rewind a person using the electricity that comes off of her horn. The way that it's explained to us is that it's more than just rewinding a person to an earlier stage in their life, it's the ability to actually rewind in an almost JoJo stand-like way. If she knew how to use her quirk, she could target specific things about a person to rewind, and that's exactly what Chisaki has figured out how to do with her blood and her cells. He's figured out a way to synthesize her blood and cells to create an application of the quirk that specifically rewinds someone's quirk factor to before it ever even developed, effectively making them quirkless. This effect is still being perfected by Chisaki since, as you can tell, Sun Eater's quirk came back to him after he got shot by the quirk erasing bullet and he got some rest, but you see how this use of her quirk shows us just how ridiculous it is. It can be used to theoretically rewind All Might's injuries to back before he was injured. It can be used to rewind several characters back into their primes, and it could even probably be used to turn the Nomu back into normal people. But this all demands for Eri to somehow 1. Learn how to use her quirk, and 2. It's also not quite that simple because Eri's quirk depends on stored up energy, and it takes months for her to be able to store up enough energy to use her horn again. While I don't think that Eri is going to be solving all of the problems in this series, especially not the big one that a lot of people think she'll be using her power for, I do think that any technology based off of her DNA has the potential to be extremely devastating, and any quirk that sounds like a stand ability is definitely a dangerous one. But the core here is that it doesn't have to be a dangerous quirk. It can be one of the most useful and gentle quirks in existence, depending exactly on how it's used. And that's why Overhaul brainwashing Eri into thinking that she's just a cursed existence that causes pain and death needs to be undone, and that might take more than just saving her from his clutches. All in all, the heroes have a lot of work to do, and while we're going to have a great time seeing all the heated battles they go through as they raid the Shie Hassaikai hideout, remember that there's still more to the story of saving Eri to go. With that said, I want to once again thank Johnny Azad for his amazing work on this video's thumbnail. I've got more character arts and 16:9 spreads to show you guys soon, but for now, this is my video on why Eri must be saved, and this has been Pineapple. Peace.